Let's party.
Hello and welcome to Party Loaded episode 229 for, I was going to say Wednesday, caught me out there, Thursday the 3rd of September 2020. That's right, we're still in this devilish year. My name's Luke Rachelic, welcome to the show. Joining me tonight we have, as always, the full crew. We have below me, Christian Paulson Brown. Off to the other side we have Matt Diet, otherwise known as the Game Dad. And to the other side of me we have Adrian, the blacksmith. Chia. How you doing?
The blacksmith.
The blacksmith. Nice. That's got to stick for a little while at least. I think you deserve it. You definitely
for the rest of this episode, maybe.
Yeah.
If we remember.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we'll get into that shortly because definitely some gaming that we've been going hammer and tongs at this week. But yeah, how's everybody feeling? How's everyone doing?
Yeah.
Tired.
Tired, yes.
Tired. Definitely tired.
A little tired. Not as tired as these guys.
Mm.
I'm tired.
I'm not as tired as Adrian.
I'm tired of you, our listeners. I'm tired of you guys. Of you.
That's all the more reason for you to keep on listening, because just keep on harassing Adrian.
Just think of the new creative ways that I can berate you, the listener.
Look, I'm not against growing our audience through sheer spite. That's totally fine by me. Yeah. Like, I think that works well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll be the villain. That's fine.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
I'll be the villain. That's fine.
Whoa. Hang on. As he brings up the Twitch window and echoes everything we're saying. Super smooth. Pro podcasting skills. Nice.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, so I think there's been a bit of stuff going on this week. It's nice. I was just chatting to Christian before. It's nice that we've actually got movies happening again now. Like, that's a thing. So obviously, if you're in certain parts of the world, you don't want to be necessarily going out and seeing stuff in a cinema. But I guess for some of us, it signals a slight turn to normality, the fact that things are hitting again. So, yeah.
I went to the cinemas last night, and there were 4 people in the cinema total. And 2 of them were me and my partner. And that was to see Tenet on, shortly after it came out. And there were 4 people in the cinema. So.
Wow. I was about to ask if it was an adult cinema, but probably
4 people there.
Yes.
Gold blast.
Nice. We'll actually see a downturn in movies later. Like Tenet and everything was recorded before the virus hit and everything. So I think we're actually going to see this drought of movies for a while.
Yeah.
But it's at least nice to be able to go back out to a cinema and see something. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we get Bill and Ted's Face the Music at the cinema, whereas in the States it's streaming only.
But we get it in the cinema.
Yep.
I didn't know that. Still won't go see it. But
I watched Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey so many times.
Did you? I've never seen it. I've never seen either of the Bill and Ted's.
I've actually got a bunch of friends that have seen the new Bill and Ted in this last week. They've streamed it through whatever methods they use, and I think it's a bunch of people that actually saw that film that would never have seen that film otherwise. So it actually makes me wonder, anything that is going online, whether it grabs a much bigger audience as a result. Just due to people, having that easy access option. So, yeah.
Mulan.
Yeah, Mulan. We don't even get that at the cinemas, I think, right? That's streaming only.
No, it's streaming only, and you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So you have the service, but you still have to actually pay to see Mulan. It's really, really messed up.
Oh, really? So it's part of a normal subscription service, but you get a premium on top to see that particular movie.
Yeah, it's the mentality that you buy it for the household, and it still ends up being cheaper than buying a ticket for each individual person in the household. That's kind of how they sell it. It's
it's available through Apple TV as well, isn't it? And the Play Store. You don't have to have Disney Plus.
Oh
right?
yeah, probably yeah.
Maybe I know that on Disney Plus it's still at a premium.
Right.
So even if you own Disney Plus, you have to actually pay to see it.
You pay on top of your subscription. So yeah. If you don't already have a subscription, then just paying for it on I don't know.
I think you
YouTube
can get it
maybe.
on the Play Store and Apple Store as well.
I'm just download it. Fucking hell.
Does anyone besides me think that that's perhaps a little worrying precedent to set? Like if companies start doing that sort of bullshit, then it's only a matter of time before we start seeing that in some of our game services as well.
I knew you've been sarcastic, right? Because that's the last 10 years of gaming.
No, I mean specifically the new wave of gaming services like Xbox Game Pass, for instance, because at the moment, you pay for the subscription, you've got access to everything, you can purchase it after the fact for an additional fee if you want to keep the game. But can you imagine if you had like an all-access subscription fee for something like Game Pass, and then if a really big game came out, like let's say Cyberpunk, or something that is designed to be played by multiple people in your household as opposed to just the one sort of subscriber to that service, if they charged additional just because of the nature of the product on top of what you'd normally pay for the service, that would be a shit precedent to have to deal with in this new world of game sub-services. So
that far off what we're already doing, I guess.
I was going to say, to me, it sounds like you're saying that you have Game Pass, but then some games aren't in Game Pass, so you have to buy them. I'm like, that's what we have now.
No, that's different. I mean, it's kind of... I guess it's...
Things like you own Game Pass, but then to get access to some games, you have to pay extra for them.
So you're saying if in order to play Cyberpunk, you had to have Game Pass and then pay more?
Yeah.
I think that's what Luke's saying.
Yeah, but that's what we've got. We got Game Pass, and then there's what's the premium one on top of it? That is what it is.
Game Pass is kind of like Microsoft's all over the place at the moment because they had Xbox Live and Xbox Live Gold, which they've now they've wrapped those services up.
Kind of have that.
I just feel like we're already in an industry that has 100 different pay models, and
you're right,
milking us in a billion different ways already.
I'm probably being extremely naive about those comments, but it's fine.
I think the movie industry is learning from games.
I'm just thinking to myself, if I'm going to go in with this kind of naive attitude to paying for game services, when I pick up Marvel's The Avengers tomorrow, I'm going to be in for a rude shock, aren't I?
I reckon that we're not going to see an uptick in companies doing that. I think that Game Pass and Xbox Live Gold are different things. Like Xbox Live Gold is a carryover from how Xbox used to work with having to have a subscription to get access to online services. I think, though, the idea of them having to charge extra on top of just a subscription is ridiculous. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. Origin has it as well. I've just wanted to say.
Origin does.
Origin's got two different models too.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called. Origin, Orange, and Origin Tic Tac.
Origin Access?
Access.
Yeah. Access Prime, I think it is.
But Disney in this case, like this isn't actually unlike Disney. Like they had their vault. Like, we're releasing this thing from the Disney vault so that we can sell movies at the same price that we did a decade ago. Like this isn't kind of unlike the sort of practices that they do. I think that as a games company, you'd have to have some damn good exclusives to be able to justify that.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. I think that's the direction Nintendo is going in some ways.
Yeah.
Where they don't have their eShop anymore. They don't have like the virtual console anymore, I should say, where they have the full, catalog of games, and they're more into repackaging and re-releasing and reselling you the game than just having it as available on a virtual console.
Nintendo exists in this weird kind of like astral pocket where like their library is so different to everybody else's that they can kind of afford to compete on their own terms though, whereas everybody else is like in war against each other currently. So it's actually probably a good place for us to be as consumers, where we end up getting the benefits of them all competing pretty hard on their subscription model prices and setups. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. It's a brave new world that we're entering into in the next few months. We'll see what the fuck is going to happen. We still don't have console prices for next gen, and it's September. What?
Microsoft's announced that the Xbox is not having any sort of news at Gamescom. I think was it Gamescom?
There's something else coming up. Tokyo Game Show.
Game Show. That was it.
Gamescom is just wrapped up, so yeah.
I stand by that horrible prediction I made before that console releases are going to get pushed back. I actually think that might happen.
When were they originally due?
This year.
Well, Xbox is the only one. Xbox is the only one that's actually committed to a date of some sort, which is November. And I can't remember if they actually publicly committed to that or if something got leaked where there was like retailer sort of arrangements that have been made for particular dates. I think it might have been that actually. So
I think Sony is officially like this holiday season. I think they have said
Yeah.
I saw new Ratchet and Clank gameplay footage, and I'm like, I think I'm going to get a PS5 now.
Yeah.
That game is just like, I don't know, it just tickles me in the right way.
That is like still the best example of next gen. Yeah.
Sunset Overdrive, Suicide Squad game. Something about that vibe of game really tickles me. I don't know why.
I've never played a Ratchet and Clank game before, but I would totally want to play that one. It looks hot.
It's just made for people with short attention spans. It's fantastic. Like, there's just like dozens of different weapons. They all do crazy shit. Yeah. Everything explodes, and your weapons upgrade as you go, and they do crazier and crazier stuff. So,
the game looks to me like an epileptic fit in the making. It really does. Like, there's just shit flashing everywhere. Yeah.
And I'm no, never mind. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Let's move along. All
right. Well, Adrian, do you want to pivot into some stuff that you've been playing? So what's going on? What's been going on this week for you in games, this last couple of weeks?
I only played two things. The first one's Destiny, and we all know we've been playing a lot of Destiny.
Well, let's go your 5-minute Destiny spot now.
I played
a weekly Destiny spot.
I played more Destiny the last week than I think I ever have, to the point where I ran out of stuff to do, so I started another character and ran out of stuff on that character. That's the amount of Destiny.
My God.
But I think what Luke is hinting at is that I completed one of the seals for Destiny 2, which, for those uninitiated, is like a set of very, very difficult achievements that give you like a title under your player name. So it's just a little bit of prestige, but it involves ticking off some very complex and time-consuming tasks, such as doing a raid in certain ways and doing certain objectives within the raid, which make it twice as hard and that kind of thing. A lot of it's time gated, so it takes several weeks to do. But it's quite an achievement because I originally started not thinking I would ever get one of these seals, because I did not envision myself involving myself in multiplayer PvE content with large groups of people where you need to communicate. I was really kind of hesitant about that because I'm essentially a bit of a loner and don't like talking to people online unless I really have to. But once I got over that initial barrier, it was actually quite easy to find groups online and get that kind of activity done. And the more I did it, the more I was spurred to continue spurred on to like
spurred on
continue to do it spurred on. So that was good. It was a good achievement. And I hadn't realized, but I also got a second one on the same night because I'd actually done all of the required achievements for that one as well. So now I've got two of those. Whether I'll do more or not this season, I don't know. I kind of am a bit worn out on it of like the grind, but who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, don't kill yourself. I mean, you're having a good time with it. There's no need to spoil that.
I'm not gonna go full Luke and fill out every seal in the game because that's like I don't know if I do respect it anymore. And the only other thing I played is I mentioned, I think previously, for her birthday, I got my wife the Switch Ring Fit adventure. And we've started a little competition where like she plays it and then I have to catch up to her in the game. So that's been enjoyable. Except for doing squats. Fuck, I hate squats, man. Like,
I've gotten back into it too.
Worst. Sorry?
I've gotten back into Ring Fit as well.
Have you? Did she message you?
She didn't message me, no, but just from you talking about it, I was like, I should do that again.
You should message her because she said to me, I should message Christian so that like we can all like compete with each other and like get our scores.
I was wondering, because I've been doing. They added a rhythm game section which they didn't have at launch, so I've been doing a lot of the rhythm game, and then you can see like friends' rankings on that. But there was nothing. I couldn't see any of like Shantae's scores. So I'm like, maybe she's not doing the rhythm
I don't think
game.
she's done that. I think she's doing like the adventure portion of it first, but I'll tell her and she'll probably message you, and then we can start like a little scoreboard thing.
Yeah. So I'm actually curious, like, is there a mode within Ring Fit? I know there's that adventure mode which wouldn't really necessarily fit this, but is there a mode within that could actually be competitive in the way that, say, like high scores in Beat Saber are?
Absolutely.
Christian would know that.
Okay.
Sure. Like there's. Everything is scored. Like every time you do a squat, it's like good, great, or excellent sort of thing. Like, and you get points for everything you do. And after pretty much every activity, you can post your scores online. Like it's built for that. And then especially the rhythm game mode. That's just like Beat Saber. It's literally things coming at you that you have to push and pull and squat and stuff in time to, and you get points just like you do in Beat Saber. So it's the same thing.
I didn't know that existed. She'd really like that because Shantae loves dancing, so she'd probably get right into that. And she was like,
right on the menu.
Yeah, okay. And she was really looking for more people to do this with, and I mentioned that you had it.
Yeah.
She's like, I got to message Christian, and we can all do it together. And you know what she's like with wanting to do things together. So I did a bit of that, but it's like doing my uni work where like I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll get around to that. And then I think about it. I'm like, I've got to do how many squats? 3 squats. Fuck that.
And it's just the basic squats, right, for you to start?
Yeah,
with?
I'm on the lowest level as well.
I remember you do squats, then you do like wide squats, then you do like overhead wide squats, and then like overhead wide squats are just oof.
there's in the adventure mode, it's like a very, very like babies, Fisher and Price first JRPG, where like there's like you run along it. It's like an endless runner style thing where you run on the spot to make your character run on the screen. You bump into an enemy and you go into like a battle. And the way you attack the enemy is like by selecting an attack. And so there's 4. It starts with like 4 attacks on the bottom of the screen, and you can choose like squats, overhead presses, something else, and you choose one of those. And then every time you do a squat, it like attacks the enemy, and that's how you fight the bad guys.
So you're literally killing things by having a squat off. That's hilarious.
Or like lifts or whatever. So you actually hurt the enemy by doing the exercise. But one of the activities is like a floor. Like the thing where you sit on the floor with your legs and do that and like straighten your legs. But it means you have to get down on the floor. So we always just skip that one because no one wants to get on the floor in the middle of like a workout. Because you have to be like, oh, shit. Okay, hang on. Okay. And then you finish the attack and then you got to get back up. And it's like, and in the meantime, the boss is just going, waiting for you to get on the floor. So I usually skip that attack and then just do the other ones.
I like those ones.
No, you're an idiot.
But they do add more complexity to the JRPG system. I don't know how far into it you are.
like the first world, like not
right. Because you end up getting there's like skill trees and stuff like that you unlock, and more enemy types like healers and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeti in the chat just says this sounds like Pokemon with more steps. So,
literal more
literally,
steps, more physical steps. But it's really interesting watching Shantae play it because she's never played a JRPG. I was trying to explain to her like, this is like a fitness version of an RPG, and she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh," and I had to try to explain what that was. So it was interesting, kind of initiating her into other types of video gaming through this. But
it's like Dungeons and Dragons if everybody was sweaty.
Well, she has played D&D, so I did use that example. Like, remember in D&D, she's like, what's my player level? Like, remember in D&D how you level up? No. Well, fucking no, I know. Like, don't worry about it.
Well, in this case, you'd level down because it's about how deep you can squat, isn't it? Like, you increase the depth? Is that how it works?
That was a nice try, Luke, but no.
Yeah, no idea.
The point is, my whole life I've thought, I wonder if if I had to play a video game by exercising, it would work and I'd get fit. The answer is no, because you still have to exercise.
Solid.
Yep.
Solid.
Anyway, that's all I've done. Yeah. That's what I did this week.
All right, I'll dive in next. I think I've got some pretty related ones. So on the topic of Ring Fit, I actually did jump into Beat Saber again this week. So I've been playing that again because I decided that I've reached the point of this global pandemic where I have run out of excuses to not exercise anymore. So
Linkin Park song pack?
That's what did it. Yep.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. I mean, Linkin Park for me is like massive 90s nostalgia. So that's high school years for me.
Early 2000s.
High school?
Yeah.
No, that was after that. Fuck, I've got my timeline all mixed up.
You probably would have just graduated. It was high school for me.
Yeah. It was definitely early days of working retail, listening to that in Games Workshop stores. Absolutely.
You probably would have just entered retirement around that time.
Sup, bitch, I'm not retired yet. But no, Linkin Park, I really enjoyed listening to all the Hybrid Theory sort of tracks again and going through that Beat Saber style.
Meteora.
Yeah, I never really got as into that. Like, I was definitely early Linkin Park more so. But
the second album, Meteora.
nowhere near as good as Hybrid Theory.
Hybrid Theory was the best.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been cool, and it's been on my mind, like getting all the VR setup sort of plugged back in and stuff again, because I've had to move my PS4 in the room to do it. Looking at some of the other VR titles that I've recently missed, like I actually now want to dive in and play Iron Man VR, because that looks kind of cool as well. And there was that other action movie one which I missed from a while ago, Blood and Truth, I want to say. I might have the name wrong, but
that like the heist one.
Yeah. It's like you're in a heist movie kind of thing. So I kind of want to play that. So there's a few things I might check out.
Star Wars one as well, Vader Immortal.
Yeah. That also looks pretty cool, because I like the different ways you can use the VR controls instead of just lightsabering. Use your force powers. That's sweet. But yeah, my brief Destiny update. I am now at 8 out of the 11 seals that I committed to this season, which is fucking insane.
You're an idiot.
The last one that I got, it was the most challenging I've ever done in this game. It's just nuts.
Is that Conqueror?
Conqueror, yeah. So Conqueror was the one for completing the 6 seasonal Grandmaster Nightfalls, which are by far the most challenging activity I've ever played in that game. So yeah, it's like a regular Nightfall, but almost every single enemy along the path of completing the thing could just instantly clap you, and you're dead from like downfield, basically. So you guys played one with me.
You haven't done.
The ones that I haven't gotten yet out of the 3 remaining that I committed to this season.
Yeah,
I've got the Moments of Triumph one, which I'm just waiting for either the extra triumphs to drop or to complete the Trials of Osiris games. So that's easy. I've got like 1 triumph to do in that. I've got the current season one, which is literally just waiting for the content that I need to finish that to drop. And the final one is Riven Spain, which is the complete all the Last Wish raid ones, which I only have to do a flawless raid finish for that and wait for 1 item to drop, which is the raid exotic sparrow, the raid exclusive sparrow, and that's done as well. So
can you use a wish to go to the end of the raid and then just finish it to get flawless? Would you have to
no, because the actual act of using the wish kills you to teleport to that point. Right. Yeah. They thought of that, so yeah. But honestly, like doing a flawless finish of Last Wish is probably the one I'm least worried about out of all raids, because I know that raid fucking back to front now. Like I'm doing an under an hour runs of that entire raid.
Yeah, but it's 5 other people you got to worry about.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people out there that are really experienced with this one and that have like a good history of just not dying the whole way through. Like I know it's a really technical raid and there's 6 encounters as opposed to the normal 4 that's in a lot of the others. But that being said, like given the amount of time that's passed since it's been out and how well everybody tends to know those encounters now, it's actually really not that tough. I think the chances of you dying are much higher in some of the jumping puzzle bits between encounters than the actual encounters themselves. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think it'll be okay. So yeah, that's it, and that's kind of like everything I pledged to do this season. So past that point, I'm just going to be filling out my triumph score and just
what are you going to do when it's all done?
I will find other things to satiate my hunger.
In the Grateful Universe?
I got no idea. It's interesting. By the end of this season, like not counting new Triumph seals that will open up with the new content in November, I will have gotten every single seal in the game except for 2, and the 2 remaining are the PvP ones. So,
did you guys see the infographic for the Warlock class? For the Warlock class?
Yeah,
that was interesting.
Yeah,
I just realised we hadn't talked about that.
New ice powers.
Did you see the major subclass overhaul stuff?
Like with how it's not a tree anymore and it's like a different, and there's like mods almost
aspects and fragments.
Yeah.
I saw that.
They haven't said whether that's going to be done to the other subclasses though. It seems to be like just a new thing for the new content. So
I would be surprised if they didn't do it for the other classes.
I think it would be great if they did it in future. I hope they don't do it now. Yeah,
I think it'll be in future. I don't think it'll be on release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I did notice that in some of the flavor text for that subclass, they used words like rime and frosty and stuff like that. And I'm like, maybe frozen. I'm like, maybe it is ice. Maybe, maybe it could be ice.
The pre-order,
one of the other guys,
the pre-order emote of getting frozen in ice, it doesn't count.
Yeah, I'm still, on the fin.
One of the other guys made a really good point where all the other subclasses are very energetic, whereas ice is the lack of energy. It's energy being taken away.
Entropy.
Entropy. Yeah. I quite like that explanation.
I do too. I think it's really cool. Yeah. But the other thing that I've been playing, and I've been playing a lot of it this week, because I've kind of fallen in love with it very, very quickly, is Ghost of Tsushima. So I finally cracked the cover and got into this thing, and I am very, very strongly enjoying it. Mostly from the perspective of the exploration in that game. Like, I think that the story's not really kind of grabbed me super hard yet, because I think it's very kind of basic. There's not. I mean, the character of Jin himself, who's the main protagonist, is to me fairly rote in a lot of the tropes that they've used. You know, the samurai tropes that they've used, which Christian's covered fairly well, chatting about it in previous episodes. But holy shit, if exploring that open world is not fascinating. Like, there's a lot of really cool shit in there, and just a lot of really nice touches with the way that they introduce you to different sort of open world challenges, like. I actually, one of the things that I know people have talked about a bit, but really caught me is like, this just encapsulates the theme of this game just perfectly, was the haiku writing stuff that you actually get to do. You go to different sort of shrine areas, and you get to basically compose haikus using different elements in the environment, and you can kind of select them and take different verses out of that content and compose this thing. And at the end of it, you just get a cosmetic reward. Like, it's not anything major, but the fact that like you going and doing this as opposed to like climbing a tower to open up a map, or beating a horde of Mongols to I guess pick up a drops sort of item or something like that. This is just really unique. This is an open world game, but the things that makes it captivating to me is the fact that it does open world stuff differently to other open world games that I've experienced in the past.
Luke, do a haiku right now.
What is it? 575.
575.
Oh, Ghost of Tsushima is cool.
That's 7.
That's 7.
Hang on.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Ghost of Tsushima.
That's line 1.
That's Tsushima's one word, isn't it?
But it's 3 syllables.
It's syllables. That's right. Okay.
Ghost of
Tsushima. Y'all should play this game right now.
Yep.
Get on board, baby. There we go. There's my super Japanese.
Very Japanese.
Haiku. Yeah.
I did see somebody. There was like a YouTube video or something of showing like an actual Japanese haiku poet haikus from the game, and they were not impressed. I was just like,
yeah. Oh, look, I expect that. Like, it's definitely kind of vanilla haiku material, but it's just cool. It's more immersive.
That reminds me of, there's a Japanese guy at work, and he and I share photos of Japanese food, and sometimes I send him photos of Japanese food that I've cooked, and his responses are always like, no. No, his response is like, I was like, that's bad. Sometimes he just says that's bad.
Yeah.
He never ever.
Except he probably wouldn't say no. He'd say yeah, which sounds very close to eat it. So you could get confused.
Maybe.
And think it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Good eyes, yeah.
Anyway, good game.
I will say as well that the tutorial / prologue I thought was magnificent. Like, really impressed with the way they introduced all the systems to you in a way that actually fed into the ongoing kind of narrative as you progressed. There's a few flashbacks where you're sort of learning combat to sort of fill out the how to sword fight kind of stuff. Different ways of learning how to hop on a horse and interact with different things in your environment as you're kind of learning to play and sort of getting into the world for the first time. And it was also quite well paced, and there was sort of action sequences that you had limited control in as you were learning sort of different pieces as you go along. Just really impressed. Like, I think it's a very fun game. I would compare it quite closely to Horizon Zero Dawn in the type of game that it is at the moment. Like, I think there's actually a lot of similarities in the open world aspects. But obviously it's its own thing. It's a very different kind of genre. And
have you done any like the legendary quests yet? For like, because there's a series of like legendary quests that are based on like tales, and each time you do one, there's like a musician who like plays you like a song, and it has like an ink blot story, and then you haven't done any of those? Not
yet. The last one that I did was picking up the guy who allows you to start using bows. So
okay, I think you'll love the legendary. Look from on the map, they're like platinum colored platinum colored icons. And they're sort of the most like supernatural and like crazy stuff that you do in the game are these legendary quests, and they're awesome.
Interesting, yeah. I'm pretty confident this is a game I'm going to probably try and platinum because I think I want to absorb everything in it. So, yeah, It's good. But, yeah, that was me this week. So, who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Yeah, jump in.
So, other than Destiny, the only other game I've been playing is Microsoft Flight Simulator. So,
holy shit.
I've got my throttle and my stick.
Did you buy that, or did you already have it?
I already had this. I got this a long time ago for Eve Valkyrie when I got my Oculus Rift.
Nice. Yeah.
But I've been using that because I think without a flight stick, a flight simulator is just, I can't even imagine just pressing keys on my keyboard to play it. It just feels it's wrong. So I've been playing with that, and yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I can really talk about Flight Simulator because it's pretty self-explanatory. I get in a plane.
Tell us about what you've seen on your journeys.
I've seen my hometown. I've seen my house. Like that. What was remarkable about that, right, is flying over my house. I'm like, okay, there's this road, there's this park, and it's all detailed really nicely. Like even the park, like the shape of the lake and where the trees are, it's all accurate and it's all 3D and popped out. Like it's very, very spot on. And then when it sank in, I was like, that's really cool. And just thinking that I can do that anywhere in the world. Like I know that this little spot of Perth is like super accurate. And because I know that every single other place on Earth is that accurate. Like someone could fly over their little hometown in Namibia and it would be as accurate. Or like
how did they do it? Did they use satellite imaging or something?
It's a combination of satellite imaging, like low flight aircraft imaging as well. So like not from satellite, and then like they've used like algorithms basically and machine learning to like detect every like sort of type of building and like interpolate what they are. So like I don't pretend to know exactly how it works, but basically they've just been able to feed all of this data into machine learning, and that it's just spat out like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is what this is what that is, etc. And it's just it's really well done.
There's some interesting stuff that comes out of it, like there's a monument in the United States that got turned into a gigantic just like bunch of flats, basically. Like, you know, I forget the name of it exactly, but you know, that sort of thing happens. And because they're using public data, like data that public has entered, you have interesting ones like the building in Melbourne that ended up being hundreds of stories tall because somebody typoed a 0 in at the end of the number of floors.
That's hilarious. Yeah,
it's actually quite fascinating. Yeah.
It's not perfect. I mean, and like when you're talking about the whole world, you can't really expect it to. And
no.
Yeti in the chat's just said like his area has a lot of roads following rivers, which the game makes really wide. I've noticed that like sometimes roads will just end into buildings, and like there will be some mistakes where it doesn't, and like sort of alleyways between buildings, it doesn't really know what to do there sometimes, and it will just if there's buildings that are too close to each other, it'll think it's one giant building instead.
Yeah,
stuff like that. So, but it's still really impressive, and it looks beautiful. The weather effects look amazing. Like if you're flying at like sunset or sunrise with clouds, it just looks fantastic. The other places I've been, I went to Seoul in Korea because I was supposed to go there on a holiday, but couldn't because of COVID. But I at least got to fly over it virtually.
Yeah.
And yeah, I haven't really been much else. I've spent a lot of time in the actual like training simulator, which is all, there's some airfield in Montana or somewhere in the States that like the training is. But so I've done all like the proper like takeoff and landing and following a flight schedule and everything like that. And I'm really getting into it. Like it's detailed to the point where you have to do all the radio chatter. Like as it takes off, the air traffic control is like, like Bravo Tango Delta 1, you are now entering my airspace. Please confirm contact. And you have to like press to like confirm contact. And then like as you leave, you enter like another radio's airspace and you have to like acknowledge them. And then they give you like a heading and then you have to like match the heading. And I love it.
I've heard that apparently there are services out there that are actually like role playing for people playing this game, all the air traffic control stuff. Yeah.
They've existed for ages.
That's
like
awesome.
There's one that's like been active since the last flight sim came out. Because there's some hilarious stuff in there with there's one YouTube channel and he literally just exists on those servers. And he runs things really professionally. But it's really funny because you have these people that have no idea what they're doing hopping in, or he goes and hops onto non-roleplay servers and then like acts mega professional with these people that are like, oh yeah, you know, this is Pancake 05. You know, and they're like, oh, hang on, I'll make way for the freaking Boeing 747 that's coming in upside down on the runway, please. Shit like that. It's fucking great.
What I really want out of this game, which would get me interested in playing it, is some sort of expansion DLC where you could actually play the role of a passenger on one of these passenger jets and just fuck with people. Like you could actually
just sit there for 8 hours. Like
no. You would find your own fun. You could roleplay as the kid who sits behind some businessman, and you get to like basically throw food at him and kick the back of his seat and all that sort of shit, and just live out your wildest fantasies of being an absolute shit to all the people around you.
That sounds like a terrible idea, both in theory and practice.
I would agree.
Well,
where you were going with that, I thought like, you know, I want to play a passenger on one of these flights so I can backseat fly. You know, your flying sucks.
Yeah, I suppose you could do that too.
Do a flip
without real risk of actually being apprehended by an air marshal. So I guess you could vicariously live that out. But then the more that I think about that, the more I think you could probably get into trouble with other people sort of doing more nefarious shit that maybe you don't want to encourage. So scrap that idea. Forget that shit.
I did try and do a barrel roll in like an Airbus and it didn't end well. I thought I was like 30,000 feet up. I'm like, how high can it be?
You got plenty of space.
Yeah, I got plenty of space, but it doesn't.
What happens when you try to do that? Does it
you basically just like do this and then just go down. Like just maybe there's a way to do it. I think there's probably a way to do it, but because of how like simulated it is, I don't know how to do it.
Because you're not a pilot.
Because I'm not a pilot. Yeah.
I've heard that if you stall out and actually get yourself into a situation where you're going to crash, the game just black screens you. It doesn't actually show a crash or anything. So
that's right. Yeah, just black screens. Yeah. And
I heard that if you crash the plane in the game, you die in real life.
Yeah. You have to sign a contract and everything.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things that I've actually seen on Twitter is people bullying each other by being like, I crashed my plane into your house, and there's a screenshot.
That's hilarious.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you know what that means, Christian? You have to give us a haiku now.
Oh.
About
why?
Flight Simulator. Because that's the theme of our games this week.
I like this. Yeah, go for it.
Plane haiku.
Fly through sky so blue, hand on stick, eyes. Wait, shit. hand on stick and throttle full bore.
Yep.
Horizon approaching. Oh
Horizon.
my god. Damn it. Horizon so far.
That's good.
I'm not doing that.
Oh, you are. You are doing it.
You can't bully me into doing it.
Oh, I
I'm not gonna
can.
do it. 7. Nice.
But yeah, I think that's all I want to say. It's fun.
Nice.
It's very relaxing. It's very relaxing.
Yeah.
I have it installed. I need to play some.
Yeah. What have you been playing though, Matt? What are you doing?
Well, I'll quickly. I'll do my 5 minutes in Destiny. It won't even be 5 minutes because I haven't actually played it all the last 2 weeks. I basically made the decision that I'm taking a break. I'm actually stepping back from Destiny a little bit, other than maybe to hop in and get exotics and that sort of thing before they all get put away.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, like I was kind of realizing that I was going to burn myself out on it, and the expansion was going to come out, and I was going to lose interest. Like if I push too hard on Destiny right now, so I'm kind of stepping back from it a little bit, other than to hop into raids and try to get Anarchy to fucking drop already and shit like that.
I got another one, Matt.
Yeah.
Oh god.
I got one the other night too.
I actually scrapped one to get its power level.
Oh, so annoying. But yeah, so I'll start off with the one I want to talk about a little bit less, which is Spiritfarer, which I really enjoy. It's mega cute. I'm still playing through it. It's mega cute despite the fact that it's actually a little bit morbid, because you're basically ferrying people who have died to the other side, is essentially how it kind of plays. And it's actually like a management game, which is really weird. Like
I didn't realize that until someone showed me some screenshots of the crafting earlier today. Like, I was like, what? It's fucking what?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a management sim. So you go out, you actually gather materials, you make them houses, you make new buildings that allow you to refine materials into new things that you can use to make more stuff on the boat. And you just basically travel this world and that's kind of it. Like you basically spend most of your time with these people, fulfilling their needs and everything before they pass on to the other side. So it's kind of like they've passed away. They take their true form on your ship, or at least the form that they kind of imagine themselves in. And you're helping them kind of come to terms with their death, essentially, before they move on. And yeah, it's really cute. It's all these fuzzy animal characters and everything. You hug them all the time. It's adorable. It's really, really adorable. So I don't have a lot to say about it. I quite enjoy it just for that on like a surface level. I do find it is a little bit weirdly grindy, but maybe I'm misplaying it. Like, finding resources sometimes is just hard. But yeah, the other one that I'll probably talk a little bit more about, I don't even actually quite know how to say the name, is NaissanceE, or Naissance. Just it's got 2 E's on the end, and one of them is a capital E.
Yeah.
It's a weird name.
I always read it as Renaissance without the Ren, basically.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it is actually a French word. I can't remember what it translates to.
NaissanceE.
It's something. It's like dream space or something like that, like a dream like kind of space, if I remember rightly. And yeah, it's certainly an experience. It's really interesting. The reason I started playing it was I was watching these YouTube kind of not documentaries, but basically talking about this concept of liminal spaces. And a liminal space is basically a space between spaces that you stop in. So it's like, a hallway is a liminal space. And they kind of become this creepy thing because when you actually stop to absorb them, they are just kind of weird. They don't exist to be lived in, they exist to be passed through. And the game that kept on coming up during these conversations was Naissance.
It means birth.
It means birth. There you go. Awesome.
It means birth.
That actually explains the ending a little bit then. Okay, cool.
Did you give birth? Did you give birth?
No.
Actual birth?
The ending ends with the words "the beginning," and I was like, "What? What the fuck does that mean?" When the credits start rolling.
Does it happen after? Does it happen after a pregnant pause, perhaps?
No.
Okay.
Shut up, Luke.
All right.
But shut up, Luke.
Wasn't your crowning achievement?
Fuck up.
I see what you did there, Christian. That was way better. Yep.
So all of the spaces that you travel through, like it's this really exploratory game, and everything is really hostile. Like it's all hostile to humans. Like no space in there is a space that you stop, right? Like it's all staircases, hallways that lead nowhere, staircases that just go up to nothing. You go down a staircase and it's just a sheer drop to get to the platform below you, where it's like, how the hell are people supposed to go down there to do this sort of thing?
That does sound kind of anxiety-inducing, like being in an area that's only between places and never actually getting anywhere.
Yep. But the game is full of Easter eggs, right? And one of my favorite ones created so much fucking anxiety for the opposite reason, right? There was this area where I was exploring these back corridors of this one space I was in. It was like, oh, this actually looks like it's meant to be lived in. There's actually chairs, but even the chairs are weird. Like the chair legs actually go up through the seats, so you can't even sit on them. Like they actually look really uncomfortable. I found this door, and it was just slightly ajar, and I managed to actually, go over to it, crouch near it. The door actually opened. I went inside. And this really pleasant music started playing. It was this really nice looking room with a bunk bed and like this little couch underneath this bunk bed thing, computers and everything. It's like, it actually looks like a really nice space to live in. I'm like, oh wow, this is really cute. This is really nice. And the game kind of slows down when you enter it. And like I'm navigating this space, just kind of looking around. It's like, oh, this is really cool. And then you try to leave, and it's got the space actually has this weird gravitational pull, where as you're trying to walk out of the room, it's pulling you back in. Like there's actually resistance to leaving it. Yeah. Like your character is like, this is a place I actually want to stay. I don't want to go. Mega interesting. Like the whole story is basically about this character who has no idea where she is. You're just in this weird fucking, I don't want to call it a hellscape because it's not really hellish. It's just like, it's in between, right?
Purgatory.
It looks
it
like
is very purgatory. It's like a limbo purgatory.
Yeah.
It's like an MC Escher purgatory.
Yeah, it looks.
Purgatory is actually a really good kind of, because purgatory is not a place you stay, right? Like you pass through purgatory. Purgatory is actually a good kind of example. So like you kind of have to pull away from that place in order to leave it. And yeah, it's full of spaces like that are weird little Easter eggs. They don't actually lead anywhere. And they're just fun to kind of explore, like little nooks and crannies. Like there was one where I walked out into this gigantic room where like the area that I exited out from had light around it, and it kind of went out, and then it just became pitch black at the corners. And so I started running, just like, I want to see where this goes. So I start running out into the room. And I realize as I'm running away from the door that the tiles are getting larger. And I kind of look back and I realize that I'm kind of like, the door that I've walked through doesn't look like it's gotten much farther away, but I've gotten smaller the further I've gotten from it. And eventually you just end out in darkness. And then there's light, and you realize that you've looped back. You're just kind of walking back in the direction of the door that you left. It's mega weird.
Right.
The game takes this brilliant turn where things get mega trippy towards the end. Like it's already trippy with this kind of like hostile spaces to humans and like stairs that lead up to nowhere and having to hop around in order to navigate it. But it takes this really weird turn where it turns like psychedelic almost. Like it uses like gray and black and white pretty much as its only colors, and it's just all these sequences where it's almost like a hallucination. One of my least favorite parts of the game, but artistically I liked it, was this one area where you walk out into it, the screen turns entirely black or white, you end up like shuffling around a little bit because you can hear your footsteps. And then you realize that everything's like, it's got lights in the scene that are moving and flashing on stuff, but it's either black or white. There's only two colors. And it's like, it would be seizure inducing. Like if you had any, kind of seizure at all, like if you're prone to them, you would have them in that sequence. Like It was fucking horrible. But artistically, I really liked, how they kind of put it together.
Yeah.
The whole game is just weird. One of my favorite spaces to kind of explore was towards the end, this weird, gigantic desert. And it was just like packed with Easter eggs. Like you'd be like, there's a ruin over there. I'm going to go check it out. And then you get there and there's all these weird spider creatures.
The prophecy dungeon from Destiny.
Yeah.
It is a little bit like
do you know what it looks like to me? Is that game Antechamber. Looks a lot like that.
It is very like Antechamber.
Yeah.
There's no weird puzzle mechanics though. It is literally just like walking, running, jumping. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
The one mechanic the game has that's unusual is basically this breathing mechanic where when you're running, you have to keep on tapping left click. And you have to do it in time with this kind of rhythm. So if you don't...
like Zelda horse riding.
It is a little bit like that, actually. Like if you don't click at the right time, your character runs out of breath and you stop sprinting, which at some points is deadly. You basically will just stop running and it's like, yep, I am dead. And there we go.
Work in real life.
It's called an autonomic nervous system. You shouldn't have to do it automatically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I highly suggest actually playing it. It's free. It only took me like 3 hours to play through. When you actually get to the part where it gets mega psychedelic and you have to deal with that scene where it starts flashing, feel free to put the game down. It doesn't get any better after that point, so you can just kind of stop there.
There's a re-endorsement.
Actually, no. I think the desert sequence comes after that weird flashy part, so it's worth getting to the desert sequence at least. I quite like that.
Yeah. This thing's been around for a while. Like, it came out in 2013 or something, I think. So
2014. Yeah, it's been around for quite a while. It's a weird artistic game. Worthwhile for a weird experience for like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. Well, Matt, you got
You have to do now, Matt.
Yeah, Purgatory Haiku.
Purgatory Haiku. Oh, God.
575. You can do it.
Purgatory. Pretty interesting. Purgatory. Pretty interesting.
That's 6.
That's it. Oh no, pretty. Yeah, pretty. Yeah. Purgatory. Interesting.
It's 8. You gotta do 5.
God damn it! Fucking hell! That's why I said no.
Purgatory, and then 1 syllable left.
Okay. Purgatory. You know what? I'm not going to do Purgatory first. You asked for this.
I'm not backing down. This is good. This is quality content.
Okay. All right. Liminal space game.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Maybe Purgatory now.
All about Purgatory.
Yep.
There we go.
Bring it home, Matt. Bring it home.
Kinda recommend.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good one. That's a full review. The full review haiku.
Yeah.
Review haiku.
Review haiku. Perfect. We should do all of our reviews in haiku. Love it. Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, with games out of the way, let's jump into a bit of this week's industry news. So, I would like to kick off tonight with something fun and exciting because we got some sort of trailers, like pretty action-packed cinematic trailers for 2 new Batman games this week. So we had the 2 new DC games, I should say, not strictly Batman games. Batman's kind of got tie-ins to each of them loosely, but so the DC Fandom event happened during the week, which is kind of like the big DC celebration, which they've been planning for a while. Got a whole bunch of new movie trailers and information about different projects that they're working on and bits and pieces. And 2 sort of video game announcements, which we kind of already suspected bits and pieces of because of things that have dropped in the months leading up. So we've got, first I want to chat about Rocksteady's new game. So Rocksteady, of course, creators of the Arkham trilogy, which are, beloved by many sort of Batman fans out there who play video games. Their latest game is actually Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. So,
Didn't they not make the trilogy? They only made Origins, right?
No, that's Warner Brothers Montreal, which is the other.
All of them are Origins.
Right, the other one.
It's sad that you call it a trilogy because there are 4 games, but I get it because Origins is kind of the black sheep.
Well, okay, so Origins, strictly speaking, is part of the through line story-wise, but I think about it in terms of the Rockstar trilogy, sort of, the ones, Rocksteady trilogy, which they specifically made. So, but yeah, so I think that the concept of doing Suicide Squad, I think a lot of people were like a little nervous about because this last Suicide Squad movie was maybe not that well received by a lot of people, despite the fact that it won some awards. So, but yeah, what they're doing with this one.
Makeup, I think, was it?
What was that, sorry?
It won Best Makeup at the Oscars.
Yeah, something like that. It won some stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so this one is going to be a much more psychedelic kind of action hero adventure by the look of it, featuring Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, and King Shark as the 4 main protagonists, I guess we could call them in this context. So, but if you look in the background of the footage that I'm just showing off now, the whole concept of them being up against the Justice League, I think is going to be driven by the fact that Brainiac is clearly involved somehow, probably doing some mind control shenanigans, because you can see like his big sort of skull alien vessel thing in the background. So, and there are definitely storylines in DC Comics verse where Brainiac has sort of taken control of some of the good characters and pitted them against some of the other sort of, heroes in the past. So I'm sure that's how it's all going to work in somehow. But there's definitely a comedic vibe going on. There's, I'm just going to skip ahead to some of the footage a little bit later on, which gets very... what's the Sunset Overdrive is kind of what I was thinking.
This game is Sunset Overdrive. I mean, without seeing any gameplay and going only off this trailer, it's basically Sunset Overdrive with DC characters. This is exactly what it looks like.
Yeah. Which, I don't know, how you're a big Sunset Overdrive fan, Adrian, so how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'm really excited for this. It's just like I said with Ratchet and Clank, how it looks like... because Sunset Overdrive is Ratchet and Clank, because it's made by the same studio. This looks like that, just with 4-player co-op and that same kind of crazy. I'm confident it'll be open world with a narrative. It's been sort of looked at in the fact that all those 4 characters have some sort of traversal. Like Harley Quinn's got a grappling hook, Captain Boomerang's got like a teleporting boomerang, Deadshot's got a jetpack, and King Shark's jumping like the Hulk. So like all their traversals already been kind of shown off in that trailer. So people are kind of nailing down what they think it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's a pretty solid bet, but it fits the tone of Suicide Squad really well. Like that kind of crazy mayhem, go nuts in an open world.
Is it going to be live service?
Well,
that's my worry. I really hope it's not their answer to the fucking Avengers game. I really hope it's not.
I don't think it's going to be. Like, Rocksteady has not really shown that kind of thinking in the past with their design. Like, it's not...
Neither did BioWare.
Yeah, I don't know. It's... I didn't get that feel from it at all. Like,
how can you get anything from it? It's a cinematic trailer.
True. But I think that it seems to be very heavily focused on those 4 characters specifically. Like, it didn't give the indication that it was going to be a larger piece involving lots of sort of drop-in characters from the wider Suicide Squad lore at all. Not like what James Gunn's working on with the new Suicide Squad movie. That's like...
It also looks good, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to be live service. I'm just worried that it might be.
Yeah, that's my worry. I don't think it will be. I think it looks a lot more like Left 4 Dead meets Sunset Overdrive. Play with 4 friends, totally. Open world space. I think that will be what they do. Leaning into more of what they've done in past. But I am concerned that they will end up strapping on a live service in much the same way it sounds like that's what's happened with the Avengers game. Like, they've had a really solid campaign, and then they've strapped on a live service thing to make more money from it.
Possibly.
As long as we get a nude mod for King Shark, I'll be happy.
I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Shark Dong, that's where it's at.
Like a Street Sharks game.
Jesus.
Sorry?
Give me a Street Sharks game.
Yes, that's what we need.
Absolutely.
Thresher.
That would be
And a nude mod for that.
Yes, the nude mod.
Yeah.
There's a reason they call him Big Slamoo.
Big Slamoo. Moby Lick.
God.
Big Slamoo.
Oh, no.
Moby Lick jab. Perfect.
If this game's good and it's not too polluted with live service crap, totally want to play this with you guys. I think it'd be
it'd be good.
Be real fun.
I would love that.
Yeah. But the other one, which we need to talk about.
I'm calling dibs on Captain Boomerang now. I don't want to be.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. I don't care which one I get to play as long as I get to do the voices for whatever one it is. So I'm all down for that. So the second game, which is the one that is coming out from Warner Brothers Montreal, which is very much a Batman universe game, is the new Gotham Knights. So this is the one that... Now, this is where things get weird, because... So the Suicide Squad game apparently is actually within the Arkhamverse. Like, it's actually part of that universe. So they can have tie-ins to earlier Arkham games in some way or another. I don't know how they'd plan on doing that, but the fact that they said that it is part of the same universe leads me to believe that they're going to deliberately put in some connections, which I think is a cool idea. Which is surprising to me, because this game, like the Gotham Knights game, seems like the one that would logically be connected to the previous Arkham games. Like, it seems like kind of a progression of how the story could play out, especially considering that, some of the characters that you see here, without spoiling anything too much, were absolutely involved in Arkham Knight, the third in the trilogy. So, I think it's a bizarre choice. I think it's probably more to do with the fact that it's, not Rocksteady. So they didn't necessarily get the call to be able to sort of say, yes, it's part of in-universe stuff. But, Yeah, so what we know is that in the very early sort of intro to the game via this trailer is Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, is apparently killed in some sort of massive explosion at the beginning of the game. Apparently, like I think he's probably about as dead as Captain America is in the lead up to the new Avengers game. Let's face it. So. And then the four sort of heroes that have been working with Batman in Gotham City are basically thrust into the limelight, and they're now the Gotham Knights. So they're basically working together to get on top of the crime that's occurring in Gotham, on top of trying to work out what's happened to Bruce. And it's very much a storyline revolving around the Court of Owls, it looks like. So... yeah. So Robin, Nightwing, Red Hood, and Batgirl? Yeah.
Batgirl.
So I assume it's the non Barbara Gordon version, because she'd still be operating as Oracle, I think, in this. So,
I don't know. I don't know Batgirl well enough.
Yeah.
I find the weird thing about this and the Suicide Squad game is that they announced two games that are exactly the same, that are probably going to release around the same time and compete with each other.
Like four player open world DC things.
Well, apparently this one's 2-player, not 4. So there's 4 characters to choose from, but the impression I got is that you can play 2-player co-op, but not up to 4. So yeah, it's more just like you've got the choice of, like, I think the intent with this one is that it probably does have like a pretty linear story path in the way that the other sort of Arkham games have, but you'll flip between different characters' point of views depending on what part of the story you're at. So there might be a little bit of interchangeability within that, but I think that each part of the story will probably more so focus on one or the other. So yeah, it's interesting. Like they showed off some of the gameplay in like an extended reveal sort of stream as part of the event, where they showed Batgirl and I think it was Robin.
Nightwing.
Was it Nightwing? Yeah, going into the Mr. Freeze.
Oh no, sorry,
area.
it was Robin.
Robin, yeah. So they'll take you on Mr. Freeze in like a high-rise building where he had some sort of giant sort of frost portal, which was like freezing this huge skyscraper and making it into this massive Winter Wonderland target. It looked wicked. Like it looked really, really cool. The gameplay looked as good as any of the Arkham games ever have. Like in terms of the combat and the actual sort of environments and stuff. I'm actually really excited for both of these games, I have to say. Like, apprehension aside, like, if they don't fuck things up with too much live service crap, I think that they could both be really super fun. And I love the Batman games.
I think everything I've seen from these DC games and the Marvel's Avengers game just reinforces the ongoing trend of Marvel good movies, Marvel bad games, DC bad movies, DC good games.
The one outlier being Spider-Man.
No, the one outlier being the DC animated movies. Because those are awesome, and the DC cinematic universe they want for live action movies exists in the animated movies. All the DC animated movies, I think, in the last 5 or 6 years, all exist in the cinematic universe that is really, really good.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the DC sort of cinematic universe is going to have like a massive upswing now that Marvel's kind of wound down to a certain extent with their current sort of arc. Because there's some DC movies. Well, there are some DC movies on the way that look pretty cool. But I mean, games, I don't know. I think games are all over the place. Like Spider-Man PS4, fantastic game. I think easily as good as any of the Arkham games.
That's true.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
But Iron Man VR.
You know what this new Avengers game makes me think of is Anthem.
Yeah, a lot.
There's something about it that makes me think of Anthem.
I get
there's like a hollow, I think it's the interface and this weird hollow, glassy-eyed visual of it, and everything looks washed out. I don't know if it's just me, but everything.
Comparison. Somebody pointed out the face models for all of the characters except Kamala, they look like cheap porn game character models.
Yeah.
They look like store asset just being pumped into the game. They have no personality, no customization, except for Kamala. She looks good.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'll tell you after tomorrow when I start checking it out. So it's going to be interesting.
Early reviews and previews actually seem pretty resoundingly good outside of the on live stuff. That apparently sucks. And
they've already talked about the next story-driven content they're going to be dropping into the game in the coming months, which is very Hawkeye-centric and Kate Bishop by the look of it. So that looks cool. I'm down for that. That looks fun. Yeah.
Make him deaf, cowards. Make Hawkeye deaf like he was in the comics. Make him sign language.
It's his daughter, isn't it? It's actually it's like the new Hawkeye. Yeah. And not only that, I was going to say, I really hate her outfit. Like, just random holes on the sides to show off skin. Come on.
I'm sure there'll be hundreds of different versions of her outfits. So, yeah.
It'll be one of those ones that if I was playing it, I'd change it damn fast.
Yeah, that's fair. So anyway, that's all the DC game stuff. I thought that was super cool, fun things to look at this week. So, yeah.
I have something a bit less fun to talk about. We'll just touch on it briefly. So, Lab Zero Games, which is the studio behind Skullgirls, which has been like a really successful, ongoing, much beloved fighting game, and more recently Indivisible, which was their kickstarted sort of Metroidvania game that was less successful, but a good attempt. There's been a lot of drama going on at the studio. So Mike Z is the kind of been the head of the studio. He's the sort of frontman personality behind the studio.
Is he a Beastie Boy?
He's not a Beastie Boy. But he's always had a bit of a reputation as being a bit rough around the edges. But it's in the past, it's usually just come across as like sort of being a lovable scumbag, like a lovable ragamuffin sort of thing. But now it turns out he is a real scumbag. Yeah. So what's happened is
reminds me of somebody from Gearbox, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah. He's turned out to be very Randy Pitchford-esque. And what it seems to be a situation of is that like no individual act that Mike Z took was like this giant illegal, really bad thing. But there's this pattern of behavior that's emerged that all the employees had individually had these uncomfortable experiences with, but they just kind of written them off as like weird and okay, let's just kind of move on. But recently they've been sort of sharing stories and talking about it, and it turns out that like everyone is consistently being like either like weirdly bullied or like perved on, or just like inappropriate comments said by Mike to them. And there's been a whole bunch of people that have left the studio now, who've quit. So the senior animator, Jonathan Kim, has left. The art producer, Brian Junn, has left. And one of the artists and animators, Mario Cartwright, she's left. And yeah, it's just turned into a bit of a clusterfuck. And it turns out that there's something else going on behind the scenes, which was Mike Z is the owner of the studio, but there used to be a board of directors or whatever. And at one point, because of what was happening, the board wanted to basically get rid of Mike. They wanted to kick him off the team or whatever. But being the owner, he just went, actually, no, I'm just going to just dissolve the board. You're all gone. I'm now a dictator. But when he did that, he said to the studio that over time, he's going to turn the studio into a self-owned thing where like everybody in the studio is going to own a part of the studio. It's going to be like a group owned thing. And everyone was like, okay, you're getting rid of the board, but this plan sounds good where we'll all own, like eventually have our own stake in the studio. And then that's just never come to fruition. That's just never happened. He's just never budged on being the sole owner and dictator of the studio. And yeah, so that happened about a week ago, 2 weeks back. People started leaving. But the update today is that according to one of the employees on Twitter, as of today, he has just fired everyone else in the studio.
Jeez. Like, it's gone nuclear.
Everyone.
Yep.
Yeah, he's just like one of the artists put up like a tweet trying to like sell some of their sketches online for money, and then someone said like, by the way, the reason that she's having to do this is because Mike has fired everybody else at the studio.
Isn't that cutting off your nose to spite your face? Like,
pretty much, yeah. It's like playing like a game of like dodgeball, but then everyone else leaves the game, and you're
not playing dodgeball anymore.
Yeah, you're just stuck holding the ball. But I've still got the ball though.
Yeah.
Everyone else is left. Yeah.
But
one good thing though is that he and Lab Zero Games don't own the IP to Skullgirls. It's actually a company called Autumn Games that actually own the Skullgirls IP. So that can still exist outside of Mike. And in fact, there's a Skullgirls mobile game, which is not developed by Lab Zero, and that's going to continue development with Autumn Games. And yeah, so there's still hope for that. Indivisible is another story. Indivisible was owned by Mike Z, but kind of...
Crap.
Yeah, bittersweet because, like, I liked Indivisible had potential, but it didn't end up that good. So I kind of don't mind so much if nothing else happens with Indivisible. But yeah, the real story is how everyone at the studio was getting treated like shit and has now been fired. And yeah,
that's a bizarre one because like the games industry is pretty big, but it's small enough that nobody's going to fucking want to work with him again. Like if he tries to recruit new talent for that studio, I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
If he owned the IP, it'd be a different matter. He'd probably end out actually working elsewhere. But because he doesn't own the IP, like he basically has nothing now. I don't understand what his game plan was here.
A bad one.
He's pretty much just gone into that. Just to do a couple of quick quotes in the exact words of the things I've read to make sure it's coming across accurately. So Jonathan Kim, the senior animator, said, almost every employee had a story where Mike abused his position of power to put his co-workers in uncomfortable, stressful situations for years, which include frequently mentioning his genitals, forcing unwanted physical contact, making sexual comments about himself or about employees' bodies, insulting co-workers privately or in front of other co-workers, or using very personal details to threaten or demean co-workers when they didn't go along with what he wanted or act in a way that he wished. So just real scumbag shit.
Fire this motherfucker into the sun.
Yep. And yeah, it said at one point in the process, full ownership of the company was transferred to Mike Z with the intent that he would facilitate the process of giving all employees full equity. But yeah, that never happened. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
That guy.
Yep.
That's the problem with gentlemen's agreements between people that are running a business. Like,
you have to be a gentleman for it to work.
Yeah, basically. Like he would like. If I was working there, it'd be based like, okay, so if you're going to do that, I want it in writing that you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Don't just give us your word. Like you've already gone and, kicked off all the board. Like what's going to stop you from just being like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to do this thing, and then have us all work for it and then get no reward at the end, right? Like put it in paper at that moment. Don't hold back from it. So
yeah. Super shitty with the timing around the number of vulnerable people out there. Like their livelihoods are much more crucial than ever before in the current climate of the world. So
sure. And there has been a minority of voices online who have accused the people leaving of making too big a deal out of it. Oh, and I'm sure he's just making jokes and stuff. But it's like at this time especially, why the fuck would you quit your job if you didn't have you didn't feel like you needed to? So
yeah, absolutely
agree.
Yeah. Well, I have actually 2 news items tonight now. One of them is a breaking piece of news. So Nintendo
a baking piece of news. Are you going to talk about cake?
Breaking piece of news.
Oh man, I want a cake! Breaking. Damn it! You've got this Destiny cookbook and everything.
This is actually the Destiny cookbook. No cake.
Oh,
there's no cakes in it.
Okay.
Yeah. Nintendo just announced 35th anniversary Super Mario Brothers Direct. And immediately after that, somebody shared, I think, a slide from something they were not supposed to, which showed Super Mario All-Stars with Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and another game.
I didn't going to be.
This has literally just happened on Twitter. Like I just got buzzed by it.
a second Mario All-Stars with the 3D catalog.
Yep.
Holy fucking shit. That is huge.
Release date September, but then they've deleted the tweet. Like within 5 minutes of that being put up, the tweet is gone.
Oh my god.
Because I was otherwise going to hold it
up. If that's true, which it sounds like it very well could be, that is fucking epic. Holy shit. Yeah,
that'd be mega cool. So, because Sunshine is a game that I've never played. That was always in the GameCube. I was never able to get it. The other one was Super Mario 64, which they've already done a remaster of that, but a classic remaster on the Switch and everything would be fucking awesome. And I don't recall what the third game was. It might have been Galaxy.
If it's Galaxy or Galaxy 2, yeah.
I'm seeing also 3D World, which was
that's good. Yeah,
the Wii U one, which was really good.
Yeah,
Galaxy is amazing.
That's my favorite.
Matt, was there any more news about Waluigi being uncircumcised? That's what I'm really hanging out for.
You have to ask him yourself.
Oh, and Yoshi's just filed his tax return.
Finally.
Took him long enough.
Now he can actually run for president. Great.
Unfortunately for Yoshi, all those eggs are dependents. So
Okay. The other piece of news I had, which was much less exciting and more just it's just kind of funny to laugh at Ubisoft, I think.
Depressing and funny, but mostly
depressing
depressing.
and funny. Yes, yes. So they had this game, mobile game called Elite Squad, which, you know, the fact it's on mobile and it's immediately lost my interest basically. But in the trailer for it, it used Black Lives Matter symbolism for this terrorist organization called Umbra, who claims to promote an egalitarian utopia, which you've now got to join a military death squad to hammer down. So Ubisoft go and they're like, oh, we're really sorry. It wasn't intentional to use the Black Lives Matter symbolism. We're removing that from the game. But the deepness of the bullshit hole gets so much worse when you find out that the game's director, the director of this studio, is Charlie Guillemot, so the son of Yves. He became studio manager straight out of university. So he graduated with his master's degree and was put straight in charge of this studio and is responsible for the concept and everything. He's the team's creative lead as well. So yeah, there's some nepotism to come and bite Ubisoft in the ass. But yeah, it's so. There was a whole tweet thing where like they were doing this advertising marketing thing, and it was like one of the characters from Elite Squad. And then every Twitter account that Ubisoft has that's connected to the Tom Clancy's universe, I suppose, had a character responding from it. It's like, oh, look at all these characters that are going to be in Elite Squad. And it's so cringe. Like, just reading through it, it's like, oh, fucking hell. So it's basically, just awful bullshit from Ubisoft. Hey, just
and a random...
they've got another stream coming up.
Oh,
it's perfect timing.
It's like, Christian, I remember you telling me about like that silence brand thing where like a brand will post something marketing thing and then all their characters will respond to the tweet as if they're like real things.
Super cringe.
Just a random sort of stray idle thought. Like, wouldn't it be a bad thing if like massive corporate nepotism and corruption was normalized by having it at, say, I don't know, the highest levels of government somewhere? You know? Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be.
And it's especially funny because like Ubisoft with Watch Dogs has kind of tried to do the opposite thing where like the bad guys in Elite Squad are basically the good guys in Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
Like
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's so weird as well because when you watch the trailer for it, there's this massive cognitive dissonance. Like, hang on, is this intentionally setting you up to work for the bad guys? Is that actually what you're trying to go for here?
Are we the bad
Because
guys?
everything... it's like everything about Umbra is like they're pushing for this egalitarian utopia, and they're pushing for equal rights for citizens. They're pushing for, greater wages, and they're trying to take down this government, but we're in support of that government. And it's like... I don't know.
But Matt, they're discrediting world leaders on social media. They must be stopped.
The really sad thing about all of this is there's obviously some pockets of like super awesomely inspired and creative people that are coming up with all of this conceptual stuff, but the machine that they're embedded within just makes the entire output look so not self-aware.
Yeah.
So
there was a whole thing after the trailer came out where Ubisoft has this back-end emailing messaging system, and there was basically multiple threads on there with Ubisoft developers basically going, what the fuck was that? This is shit. Like, what are we doing? And there was a big internal email sent around from Charlie, who was basically saying like, oh, in future we'll talk more with developers to make sure this sort of thing doesn't happen again. So it sounds really like, he's probably in charge of the project. He's just pushed a whole bunch of stuff. When people have questioned him, he's like, do what I say. Then they've released this trailer. They've seen the backlash, and I don't believe that anything will actually change out of it. I think that they will try to save face and everything. But it's so funny because literally just a couple of months ago, they donated $100,000 to Black Lives Matter. Like, what do you stand for as a business? Like, which is it? So,
I I think this is probably to give them some benefit of the doubt. I think there's a large amount of ignorance instead of malice in this.
Probably.
I think personally, where like, yeah, I don't know how much to ascribe to ignorance, how much to ascribe to malice, but I think there's some degree of ignorance in there.
Yeah.
The kid is like 25 and he's in charge of this studio and he's the creative director on this project. Like, he knows nothing about fucking games, right? Like, I am actually more qualified to run that studio for him. Like, not that doesn't say a lot. I feel like I'm pretty good. Anyway, the more to the point, like, just the fact that he is running the studio with no experience. Like, there will be people that are working under him that are more, qualified than he is to be making the decisions that he's making. It's literally just inexperience. And I would agree. Like, it's quite possible that in this inexperienced position, he's like, oh, what can we do that's topical to set as our villains? And they've chosen something that's just a really fucking bad idea.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, well, shall we get into chatting about a topic of really fucking bad ideas?
Well, that topic,
it's
that
a good segue.
Yeah, kind of is part and parcel of the main topic, I guess, that we'll talk about tonight, which is I wanted to talk to you guys and our audience about games and sensitive subjects, or like touchy subjects, and sort of navigating the waters around how, when, why, and should games deal with touchy subjects, and not just touchy, but also like revered or sacred. So could be things like great works of literature, or like really highly revered works of art, or film how do they get translated into games in respectful and meaningful ways? And there have been cases in the past of studios mishandling subjects or properties in disrespectful or uncomfortable ways. And so, yeah, I guess I just wanted to open up with an open question. The open question is, are there any subjects that games should not touch?
Yes.
Yeah? So there are some... Yeah. Do you have an example of a subject that there's no feasible way for a game to touch?
It's not that there's no feasible way to touch it. I think that it's more a case of just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think perhaps one of the more obvious ones that you might bring up could be going into some of the more sort of gruesome details of the Holocaust would be a really good example. I think part of the reason why that would be a relevant one now is because there are still, in this day and age, a number of Holocaust survivors out there. And for that reason alone, it is probably not the right time to be sort of going back to that kind of time and exploring some of the grimmer aspects of that part of world history. So I think that, there's definitely something to be said for the timeliness of certain adaptations and the challenge associated with it based on the fact that things could be quite recent or raw. And by recent, I mean, generationally recent could be a factor, whereas stuff that's centuries ago maybe is a little bit more fair game because we can kind of look back on it and know that we're not so much at risk of hurting anybody by covering that content. But yeah, that would be sort of my initial thoughts on it. Like, timeliness, I think, is a huge factor in some of this stuff. Yeah.
Now, specifically, because I imagine you feel differently about books and movies when it comes to a subject like the Holocaust, right? Like, we have films like Schindler's List, which are like amazing works of art which deal with that subject. So what is it about games that in particular you feel they should kind of wait or be more hands-off with that sort of stuff?
The immersion, I think that's the big point of difference. Yeah. And the fact that because the player actually has agency to change certain aspects in the way that they experience or play through that content, for that reason alone, I don't think it would be as true to like the actual historical angle, and can be manipulated in a way that is maybe not true to it. Yeah.
Is it like a trolley problem thing where, like, once you have agency, you're responsible for what happens in that scenario, whilst with the movie, you can just watch it and consume it without being responsible for the content?
Yeah, partly that too. Yeah.
I think that... See, my opinion on this stuff is that, like, in a weird way, I don't think necessarily anything is out of the question for turning into a game. It's more a matter of doing it tastefully, which a lot of topics you can't do tastefully. And I think that's the big key thing, right? Like, I think when it comes to historical stuff, like if you're going to do a game about the Holocaust, like the moment you say game about the Holocaust, it's immediately like that's going to be hard to make tasteful, right?
Yeah.
And like, what is the interactivity here, right? Like, how are you kind of managing that? And I think that there's a lot of games that touch on the subjects around stuff like the Holocaust without directly being about the Holocaust necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Like they can be about that subject without being like, you know, this is based on real people and the facts and all of this stuff. They can become experiences that are artistic, where it's a message about that event. But you wouldn't go and make Holocaust train sim. Like, that would be fucking awful.
To give you a more recent example of how this kind of would tie in terms of relevance to something that's maybe a lot more sort of we're in it now. Imagine going out and making a game like now or in the next couple of decades about the coronavirus pandemic. That's another really good example, because that is super fucking raw. Like, in terms of gamifying an experience like that, absolutely it could be done. I mean, there's board games out there that do it already, like, you know, Pandemic, hugely, one of the world's most popular board games around controlling an actual pandemic. But to do something that was specifically COVID themed, it's not a case of can, it's a case of should, because that's going to be a lot more raw for people and maybe is not a welcome adaptation of that kind of media at this time. So
it's already happening. There's already a team.
Doesn't mean that it's going to be good or it should be happening. So
it's the guys that did I forget the name of it, where you make a disease and you spread it. I forget the name of that game. Damn it.
Yeah. I know
you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But what they're doing is they're plaguing. Yeah. But they're flipping it. So
it doesn't have to be good to be art either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like they're taking the whole coronavirus thing. It's not about spreading it, because that is distasteful. They're talking about you're now the person that's trying to solve it.
So
right?
that's the pandemic board game version where you're stopping the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas Plague Inc. normally is spreading a fictional virus. Whereas if they're taking coronavirus, they can't just go and add that to the game. And I think that's exactly what happened, is that some modders went and made a fictional coronavirus mod thing for it, where you spread coronavirus, and then China pulled the game. And they were like, no, we're going to flip that. We're going to take it. We're going to basically say, hey, so here's a new free expansion to the game where you're curing coronavirus. That's does the opposite thing, where it's no longer a joke, right? Like, let's actually talk about the facts. Let's actually understand how this thing spreads. Let's talk about solutions. Like, it's a far more tasteful approach in the exact same game, which is why I say, like, I feel like those topics, as long as you take them tastefully and you're representing them in a tasteful manner, you can cover almost anything, right? It's just that some things are going to be harder to do than others.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Some things like are inherently divisive, and to do it tastefully is almost impossible unless you forego like one of the angles of how a story would be told in its entirety. Like, another example, what if you were to go out and make a game at the moment about being a police officer trying to quell riots using like any
immediately distasteful.
Yeah, exactly.
Immediately distasteful. Like the moment you're talking about that perspective, right? Like, it is going to be distasteful that way.
Really fucking hard. Yeah. So
my next question is, are touchy subjects or sensitive subjects inherently better treated by indie studios than AAA studios?
Yes.
What? Elaborate.
Indie studios can take risks on those things flopping and not being good games.
Yeah, that's true.
Like AAA studios, the whole reason that AAA, like, the whole game design process for a AAA studio is so vastly different from a indie studio, because a AAA studio, they start out with how many people can we sell this concept to? Let's make a game for it. Whereas indies are like, it'd be cool if we made a game about this thing that's a touchy subject that I am passionate about. I'm going to make a game about that. All right, now how many people can I make that game for, right? And sometimes if you're, depending on the sort of indie that you are, you don't even think about it at all. You never think about your audience. There's basically like, I'm just going to put this thing up on itch.io. But when you're talking about larger scale indies, then it does become harder, right? Yeah. Because like Yeti mentioned in the chat about That Dragon Cancer, brilliant game. Very, very difficult subject to talk about the death of a child. Not everybody's going to play it, right? But do they care about their audience, or do they care about the message that the game carries with it? And that's where indies can kind of make sacrifices. Like, they have much smaller budgets. They're not having to go out there and sell a game to millions of people, which is why Ubisoft did this Elite Squad thing. A lot more people are going to be interested in a game about the military than a game that's about Black Lives Matters protesters.
Do you know what I think the difference between indie and AAA tends to be with this kind of material? I think that they actually both do it to a certain extent, but indies will actually kind of put it on the tin, so to speak. Like, they'll actually broadcast the fact that this is what they're trying to hit with that content and make it overtly obvious. Whereas AAA studios will still cover that kind of sensitive material, but it'll be hidden within the content, and you'll appreciate it ever the more by exploring the game and actually experiencing it, rather than it being the thing that game is necessarily known for. Like, to give a recent example, like when I played through Persona 5, like, there's some pretty shocking content in there in terms of like relation to suicides and sexual abuse and themes like that is like massively confronting, depending on the context that it's in. But the fact that that's not what the game's all about, and it's kind of just one of the sort of subplots in there, makes it, I think, even like more effective, but also it allows them to take that risk and get away with it. So, yeah.
I wanted to mention, I think that, like, with indie studios, the impression I get is that a lot of the time individuals are able to tell their stories more. Like, if it's a small team, the game might be about, coming from internally one of those people that's making that game. Whereas a AAA studio, it tends to be more boardroom-centric, designed by committee sort of stuff. So a game like Papo and Yo, which is about like family, like violence, domestic abuse. It was made by I think a Brazilian studio, and it was a personal story from one of the developers. And so, dealing with a subject like domestic abuse, they were able to sort of do that in a respectful way because it was their own story. Whereas, can you make a AAA game about domestic abuse? I don't think you can.
No, not about.
Like, no. I think that there's great examples in big AAA games, like Luke said. Like, Halo has stuff about child soldiers in it, but they kind of gloss over that fact because you don't play Halo for a critical discussion about how the military misuses its soldiers or how, like, children are brainwashed from young ages to be pro-military. You are there for shooting aliens, which means that you're pro-military as far as the game mechanics go, right? So it can't take a critical look at that thing, because that's not what the game ends up being about. It's like, that's the thing in the background. We'll write some books about it and we'll cover it in depth in the books, and we'll kind of tackle that concept. But you rarely get time for that sort of thing inside the game, unless that game ends up being a big RPG. And even then, they kind of miss the opportunity, because, like, most of the time the game will come out and then you have a whole bunch of interviews on the way to its release, and developers will go, oh yes, our game that's based in post-apocalyptic Washington DC, where this group is trying to take over the presidency, is not political. They actively push against the idea of their game being political at all, because I think it terrifies AAA studios. Because, again, they're about how many people can we sell this to. And the moment that they go and say, oh, yeah, the game is political, the core audience on Twitter is going to be like, no,
That's actually one of those. That's one of those interesting things. Like, a lot of people get aggro about games for getting political, but I think that's the one thing that you absolutely can do in games. Like, you can absolutely be political. I don't think that's a risky area so much at all. Which I don't know why that is. Like, I actually don't know why that kind of thing to me seems safe, when we're talking about, other quite serious themes that, are probably as serious as some political themes, to be honest, are taboo. Like I struggle to find where the line is there, actually.
Well, I wanted to bring up the Call of Duty trailer, Call of Duty Cold War trailer. So I don't know if you guys know about that, Adrian. You might not have seen this. So Call of Duty Cold War's coming out, and they put out a trailer, and in the trailer there's about 1 second of footage from Tiananmen Square. And in response to that, the Chinese government banned the trailer in China, and then Activision pulled the trailer globally and then re-uploaded a edited version of the trailer without the Tiananmen Square microsecond in it. And what is amazingly ironic is that what the tagline to that trailer is "Know your history or be doomed to repeat it," and they're editing out history from their trailer where the tagline is "Know your history." And so I think that's it's a touchy subject, and AAA games like that don't have the balls in this case the game's not even going to be about Tiananmen, but just showing that AAA just isn't the right place for it.
If it hasn't happened yet, 100% there's going to be an interview at some point with the developers of that game, and somebody will say the game's not political. Guarantee it.
Yeah.
Guarantee it.
It reminds me too of when it was Detroit Become Human. David Cage, there was an interview before that game came out where somebody asked him about racism and civil rights and that sort of thing, and he said the game's not about black issues. The game's about robots. But then the game comes out and there's robots are at the back of the bus.
Oh shit!
The King quotes in it. And you just can't have it both ways.
So recently, when the Black Lives Matter stuff started happening, he got back on Twitter and was like, "We feel that this game is all about this sort of thing, and we hope you feel supported by the message that it carries." Yeah, it's literally they'll say what's going to be the least offensive to their core audience at the time. That's basically what it comes down to with AAA. Whereas I think a lot of indies, there's this thing in indie development that I've seen where they will talk about create the foster the community that you want to have, right? And for a lot of these AAA games, they can't do that because they want to sell the game to as many people as possible. And you have studios like Bungie who do, they will draw the line. But when it comes to indies, they will actively just kind of be you're just not welcome in our community. Sorry, that's this. Our game is about this, and if you don't like it, then you can piss off.
Yeah.
And that comes all down to sales figures, basically.
I actually want to ask Adrian something, because I think that, out of the four of us, Adrian, you traditionally have been the person I've known who has, in jest, been extremely easy to offend, but in reality, actually really fucking hard to offend. There's not a lot that you tend to really be put off by. What, in terms of a game, would be a theme that you think you would find offensive? Can you think of anything?
I was worried about even sort of being involved in this conversation because I don't want people to think I'm being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, but and the whole time you three have been talking, I've been testing myself by saying to myself, that's fine. How do I feel about that? I'm not okay with that. Why? Maybe I am okay with that. So I was thinking about what are those games that have been. What was that one, Manhunt, that was that was annexed because it was about
torture
serial
stuff,
killer violence and torture and stuff.
Yeah.
There was Hatred is another example.
Hatred,
about public shootings.
And I mean, in all honesty, and I'm not saying it to be contrarian, I have a hard time thinking of something that I don't think should be allowed to be made in a game.
We're not talking about allowed, right? We're not. I don't think any of us. We're not discussing ratings or legality.
The reason why I was asking this, I think specifically, and tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding with the way that you would mentally approach these kinds of things, as I know you, is that you're very easily able to flick a switch and go, "It's just a game, therefore it doesn't matter." So,
but I can't, in good conscience, say that that's true because, if you when that. I don't think I even fully understand that Ubisoft situation, all I saw was a couple of screenshots on Twitter, and I was like, are they making a game about Black Lives Matter, saying that the protesters are bad? That's not good. So I do have a moral compass in that regard. Can you elaborate, Christian, on you were in the middle of clarifying just then?
I was just saying that, like, I thought it would go without saying that I'm not talking about what can be made or what like. I'm not saying that nobody should make a game about the Holocaust or whatever. I'm just saying, like, why is it difficult to, and is it a good idea to? But people can make whatever the fuck they want.
I don't think it's about having a moral compass or not. I think it's about whether you are able to separate different forms of entertainment to sort of embrace the same moral compass that you would have in real life. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, you'll always with that differentiation in mind, Christian, then like if we're taking for a part of the course that anything can be made, and the question is more about why are those things not successful,
and why are they difficult? Like,
I mean, you start to get into an issue. You start to get into the territory of like you say, taste and what is permissible in society, like, without going too big brain on it, because I don't even have the skill set to do that. Like, I think there are just certain things that society won't tolerate at any given time. Like you've said, things like the Holocaust. Like, but I don't know. I just to answer Luke's question, you're right. There's not much that would probably offend me, I don't think. But again, I'm not so black and white really, because if someone made something that I cared about and it was offensive, then I would be offended. So I don't know.
Like, there was a game like mocking the deaf community.
Yeah, I tried to avoid that example, but that's probably what comes to mind.
Yeah.
But part of me is like, fuck it. Like, just make do that. That's fine.
And that's why I didn't want to steer this into a subject of like, what should and shouldn't be made. I wanted to keep more on why is it difficult to make this. How should it be handled properly? How have things been handled poorly in the past? Yeah. But like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think one thing that is almost like an easy door opener to most topic areas is if something is done with comedy being the goal. I think that satirizing or having a comedic angle on a lot of these topics is often a way that it can possibly be done, but not always.
I think, Christian, that example you raised earlier about the game of like domestic abuse where the story was being told by a survivor, I think that plays a big part of it. I watched like a video essay on The Producers, the Mel Brooks film, where it's about sort of Mel Brooks being Jewish, and then a lot of his like artistic direction in a lot of the films and movies and stuff that he makes has to do with like Holocaust and Nazism and all that kind of stuff. So there's sort of like it's kind of like a lived experience ticket that people have that allows them to sort of go into that area. Yeah. And it's a kind of similar theme you see in disability, where the trend now toward it's trending in disability support as an example, as like lived experience is the quantifying factor for people. So I think if you have lived experience, I know this is a little bit separate to other questions on the topic, but lived experience enables you to sort of tell that story effectively. And I think if it's effective enough, then it will sell to people. But if you try to manufacture authenticity, that is where you're going to fall down, I think.
And I feel like the whole idea is like, you need to be able to tell the story from the perspective of victims, not people that have caused that, right? So, like, when we talk about hatred, it's a game about shooting and murdering people, and they say, oh no, it's meant to be about how this is bad, but you're doing it from the perspective of the person that's harming others, right? Whereas if you can tell the story from the perspective of people that have suffered through this, without it becoming torture porn. Like, without it becoming that thing where, again, like it's done with respect, then then it's probably fine to talk about it. Because we talk about, like, the idea of making a game about school shootings is awful, But how much might people in the United States actually learn about how damaging their system is if you did a game about that was tasteful, where they could understand the issues, right?
Is it as simple a formula as like sensitive issues don't sell, therefore studios with talent don't make games about it? Is it that simple? Like
big studios, at least.
Yeah,
big
but
studios,
like, and the majority of studios with the talent to make a good game are generally bigger studios.
Yeah.
And because they're like Christian was saying earlier, because they don't have the balls or they can't afford to alienate their customers, they don't do it. So it seems a bit cyclical to me. Where like you can't make a game about like big studios can't afford to make a game about school shootings. Therefore, no good games on that subject are made. Therefore, that's why those games don't exist.
But then you do get examples where AAA games, they just include themes or moments of these sensitive subjects, like Luke was talking about with Persona, and Matt talks about with Halo. Yeah, so that's kind of closest that they can get, is just brushing on things. Yeah,
it's almost
they can't get too close to the flame.
Yeah. It's almost the opposite for indie studios though, because like their goal in a lot of this is to sort of push the envelope so that they have something that differentiates themselves from the competition. Like they actually want to draw attention to themselves and stand out by sometimes like doing something controversial or extremely edgy, so that people are just like, holy shit, I can't believe they're actually tackling that. Let's pay attention to this business. You know?
Yeah. So I'm gonna say something potentially controversial. I don't think in a lot of these cases it is an issue of these big AAA studios. I think that it is an issue of a select few people that are in charge of a lot of stuff, making a lot of these calls about why we shouldn't do these things. Because if a studio like Rockstar can come out and be like, yeah, our game has you shooting cops and running over prostitutes, and they marketed it on that shit, and they counted on the fact that it was going to be, controversial in the community. Like, why can't other AAA studios do that sort of thing, right? Yeah. And it's because, like, it was done, they wanted it to be distasteful. And I feel like a lot of these AAA studios don't want to tackle those concepts because they just don't think they can be tasteful about it. And like, it's less about being terrified of losing that very loud audience, as it is just like you say, like they just lack the guts to do it, basically.
You're right though, that like that creative talent and that risk-taking culture could exist in a lot of the bigger studios, but if there's one or two key figures nixing those decisions at the finish line and preventing them from ever seeing the light of day, then that would result in what we're seeing now. Classic example of all the stuff that's been coming out about Ubisoft recently, like their creative director was basically the one of the, if not the sole reason why so many of the Assassin's Creed games over the years had no female protagonists. Like that there was teams within pushing for that, but he would just basically put the kibosh on that like every single time because
it's all
he had the view that it didn't
justifications.
Sell. Yeah, exactly. And
women don't sell games.
Yep. So and that's a very sort of simplified example of what would no doubt be going on with other more risky themes for sure. Yeah.
And just to tie back to one thing that we did talk about before, but I wanted just to get a little more on games in particular. So we're saying that it's more difficult in some cases to deal with these subjects in games than other forms of art, and that's because of your controlling. Yeah, we were talking about. It's because you're the one actually behind the actions.
Direct interaction with the narrative, right? Yeah. Like, that said, you can totally have distasteful movies, right? Yeah. Like if you sat down and watched a movie that was about this really difficult subject, but they were going at it from the direction of like, this person is doing all of these horrible things. If they framed that person as the hero, that would be a fucking awful movie. Yeah. But I actually was going to make a comparison. When you all played The Last of Us 2, you kind of talked about what it was like to play this horrible character that did these horrible things, you disconnected from them. Like, you can watch a movie about that character because the way the framing is going to work is you're going to sit there and go, wow, what a horrible human being, right? Whereas in a video game, you become that person, right? And those actions are now your actions. And a lot of people will just be like, I don't want to do this. And they'll just put the game down. Whereas in a movie, like, you can see somebody doing that. There's detachment from the events, essentially. Yeah. And for a lot of people, like that doesn't necessarily make those events easier to or less confronting. But yeah, like I find with those sorts of things, like not to say that film has it any easier. Film's just an older medium, and larger studios, even there, like still won't necessarily take risks on a lot of those things. But they don't have to worry about the interactivity component, at least, right?
Yeah. Do you guys remember, ever heard of a game called 6 Days in Fallujah?
Yes.
No.
So in the Iraq War, 2004, there was a real-life battle called the Battle of Fallujah. And then it was within months of that real-life battle happening, there was a game announced called 6 Days in Fallujah.
Oh, wow.
And it was going to be covering that same battle. But and it subsequently it was in development for like 5 years before it finally got cancelled. But it was actually being made by somebody who was in the battle.
Oh, wow.
Like they weren't like the head of the studio or whatever, but they were involved in the project. And as part of like research for the game, they even interviewed like Iraqi civilians, they interviewed Iraqi insurgents, and they tried to get like as many perspectives as they could on this real life battle to try and make a respectful, accounting of this battle. But none of that ever sort of that research that never formed part of the narrative about the game. The narrative was always this terrible idea of making entertainment about a real life battle is heinous and should be stopped. And like, I think it's just a really interesting case of trying to do what we talked about, of trying to tell the stories of the lived experience, but maybe because it's a military shooter in particular, like they weren't able to penetrate the public consciousness and convince people this is an okay thing to do. And a whole thing got cancelled.
Yeah. Like this. So I actually have two games. Like I have what I think is a good example and a bad example of these kind of topics, right? So good example and like a classic one that gets kind of brought up a lot in the Australian games industry is a game called Escape from Woomera, which you actually play as an asylum seeker who's been locked up, and basically you have to find a way out of lockup. And it was basically, the whole game was a political statement, basically. It was meant to be against, like, why are we putting these asylum seekers into cells? And this was like back in like 2003, 2004. But it was like one of those examples where it's like games can be political and be engaging at the same time. But then you have games, like we've been kind of primarily focused on very, very difficult subjects. But I think there's also something to be said about subjects where like the stuff that's being portrayed is either negative or just bad advice. So like the game that comes to mind is Super Seducer, if you've ever heard of it.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Like games where this is a game about dating advice, basically. And it's horrible male chauvinistic bullshit, basically. And it kind of like, again, like this is basically sexual harassment simulator.
Yeah.
But he's acting like this is good advice. So shit like that is also just, that's the sort of thing you just really shouldn't do. Or if you do go and do that thing, maybe actually get some women in to tell you whether or not the advice you're providing is effective pickup advice, right? So yeah, like these are the sorts of things where it's hard to make good games at all, let alone when you have difficult subjects to talk about, or you're trying to get across information that you know nothing about in the first place. So
yeah. Well, I think we did a pretty good job of talking about this sensitive subjects of sensitive subjects. So yeah.
It's a really tough one. Like, yeah, I think there's something to be said for non-sensitive games that are challenging to adapt as well. But that's like a whole other thing we could discuss at length.
Yeah.
And that's more from a maybe like a mechanical or narrative standpoint. But
yeah, like I we won't get into it, but I wanted to talk about there was an Animal Farm game that was announced, Georgia Was Animal Farm, and just how that's going to be translated into a game, and like that's just.
When you were talking about that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's actually like not difficult concepts to get across, but difficult games to make. And I was sitting there and I'm like, how would I make a game that's about a recipe book?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
how would I do that? You know, it's not a game about cooking. It's a game about this specific recipe book, right? Because you know that is a thing created for a very specific purpose. You read the recipe book to make
But
food.
there's already a game about a cooking book. It's called Destiny 2.
It's the other way around.
It's the other way around. The whole game is just backdrop for the cookbook.
It's the prologue before the cookbook.
Make it a game about cooking people, and then I'm on board.
Oh, I reckon you could totally make a game out of that. Do the
Probably
Simpsons
easier,
version.
actually.
Yeah.
See, I was sitting there and I'm like, oh well, if I were to do a game about the Destiny cooking book, there's different skill levels for different recipes. So you could actually make a game of like, hey, so what have you cooked today? You know, like you go in and say, I've cooked this. You know, how does it taste? You know, are there any of these flavors? And it's like, oh, no, it tastes a little bit burned. You know?
You want to learn how to make a really good sandwich, so you go to subclass.
Yeah.
Fuck you. That was terrible.
Luke's just mad he didn't say it.
I super am. Yeah, that was bad. All right. Well, anyway, on that note, that was a good place to finish it, I think. Nice. Well, thanks for the discussion tonight, Jez. That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was a show that took lots of twists and turns and covered some stuff that we don't normally cover. So that was cool. So this week I'm playing Avengers. We'll talk about it next week. I'm super curious as to how that's all going to play out. It's going to be weird. So yeah.
It'll be the Fallout 76 of 2020.
Don't know. I'm going in with extremely low expectations, so that may actually aid in my enjoyment. We'll see how that goes. Yeah.
So you're going to push Ghost aside for Avengers then? You're going to try and play more Ghost?
Play more Ghost.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm really absorbed in Ghost at the moment, but I'm finding it quite a relaxing experience for the most part. So I think I might be able to handle juxtaposing between the two for different purposes. And obviously I'll still be, sticking the Destiny needle in pretty hard at every chance I get. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting test to see what sticks and what doesn't. So ask me again in 2 weeks. I'll be able to tell you then. Yeah. But like I said to you guys earlier, one of the big motivators for me getting the Avengers game, regardless of whether I sort of click with it or not, is I've got 2 young boys who absolutely will, because they love Avengers and they have no standards. So... yeah. Oh, actually, that being said, my eldest Benjamin has actually just finished Arkham City. He just played through all of Arkham City, and he freaking loved that game. And he actually played it really intelligently. So I'm kind of impressed with him at the moment with regards to these kinds of games. So yeah, good to see.
I'll probably end up picking up Avengers, but I'm going to wait and see what the general consensus is on reviews first. I know like what I've seen thus far is pretty good, but I. Despite the fact that it's not released in Australia, other than on Xbox, I actually have Crusader Kings at the moment. I'm going to be playing since that's just come out on Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah.
So if you can't get it on Steam, get it on Xbox Game Pass. Do it that way. It's for some reason on there, but not on Steam. So.
And that's Crusader Kings 3, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Crusader Kings 3. The most recently, literally came out 2 days ago. So.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. All right. Well, let's end it there. Thank you very much for everybody for listening. Catch us all the usual places. So at Party Loader Show on Twitter, Party Loader on Facebook, and check out everything via the hub at channelendgame.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks for all the usual fun and shenanigans. We'll be streaming next week at the same time. So back to Wednesday nights from this point onwards. So 8 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time on Wednesday nights. We'll be streaming or podcasting. Catch us then. And until that time, we will see you next time. Thanks very much. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, gang.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.